Jeff Tutino here with C&R Racing Incorporated. Hey, we've all been there. We fill our radiator up full of water, put a 32-pound cap on it, go to the racetrack, and all of a sudden we pick up mud and debris and the temperature starts to climb. The driver sits there and says, should I finish this thing and blow the motor up, or should I go in and let these guys clean the thing off? Well, today with a pressurized system, learning how to use it, those worries are over. Finish the race. So why a pressurized water system? Pressurized water system allows us to keep water in contact with all the parts and get rid of any micro bubbles that may be inside the system. How do we do that? Two major components here, the radiator and the PRV can and valve. Why the radiator? They're not all created equal. Tubes need to be reinforced in such a way during construction so that they can handle the kind of pressures we're talking. Because here's what we are talking. Normal 32-pound cap, going to start to spit water at about 220 degrees. A pressurized system set up properly with the right radiator is not going to even start working on the air spring until about 240, 245. That's what pressure is all about. That's how it works. And now it's time to get into the actual installation and setting of our pressurized system. So that we can cut a little bit of time, we've pre-mounted our radiator and our can. But let's also touch on something that's probably one of the most important parts of this entire thing. That's the instruction manual that's going to show up with your kit. I've set many of these, and I still have this sheet here today because it's so important that we follow the steps as they're outlined. The last thing we need to do is to cause a problem that was self-induced because we just didn't want to follow instructions. So please, this is the most important part. With that said, with our radiator mounted and completely hooked up, we take our bleed line off of our radiator and we run it back to one of the 2 6 ports that are going to be on the pressure can. This is the radiator bleed. You'll also notice in the instruction manual that it talks about bleeding the heads. I caution everybody, make sure your rules allow for such a bleed. There is some out there that do not allow you to run a line off of your head. If you can, please utilize that to the other -6 port that is on the can. Can be oriented for ease and whatever you need to do with that. But those are probably the 2 biggest keys. You'll see a sight glass here. This sight glass is going to be our reference to our water fill line, and it's also going to be a visual aid if we happen to have air somewhere in the system when we get to that pressurizing point. You'll see a fitting here, which is our connection to the pressure tool. Again, something we'll talk about in a little more detail, but it gives you a visual of what we're looking at with this. We have a line that will come off of the bottom of the can, preferably a 10 AN, but an 8 will be fine, and that line's going to run down and it's going to go to the suction side of our water pump. This then ties the entire system together. So we've got bleeds, we've got visual aid, we've got pressure tool, and we've got a return to the water pump. Now everything's got to have a brain, and the brain in the pressurized system is the PRV, or the pressure relief valve. This valve is going to come to a 36 psi cracking point, all right? That doesn't mean now that I've only gone from 32 to 36. There's more science involved in that, and this valve here is going to control that science for us. So with this valve out, everything plumbed, we then want to go through and fill the radiator through the top port of the pressure can. As we get our water in the system, we'll fire the car up and we'll let the water then circulate so we can purge all of the air out of this. As we're doing that, what you're going to notice is you're going to start to get a spitting action out of your top bleed. It'll be an air and then some water, air, some water. This is ensuring that we are pushing the air up into the system and getting it all into the can, which is where we want it to be, nowhere else. So the water and air spitting motion is going to be just to ensure that we are pushing the air up out of the entire system. You'll also notice with your C&R pressure system kit that you buy, you're going to get a bottle of Safe. What this is a conditioner for the water. It's important that we keep in mind 2 things. Use a conditioner, and we hope safe because that's what's going to come in your package, and always fill your system with distilled water. Well waters are very corrosive. Most city waters you can't count on. We're dealing with components now with tube and fin design that's so thin, and it's thin for the right reasons for you guys to race hard, but it's also susceptible to minerals and such in the water. So please, use the safe that comes in the kit. So now that we've got some of our water in, we're going to go ahead and we're going to top our system off now. And we should be able to start to see, because of the color of the safe, beginning to come up in our sight tube. I'm about 25% full with my can, and I'm going to bring my can to a 50% full mark right there. And then we'll go ahead and we'll start the car one more time, and in doing that, we'll determine on whether or not we lose our water line. If our water stays at 50 to 25%, we've purged all the air out of the system. If I now lose my water line out of this can, I have air somewhere else, so I need to keep purging. All right, now we've started our motor. You can see I've still got a good water level in the can. So at this point in time, I haven't found any air pockets in the system. So now it's time to put the PRV valve back in. Now, hopefully you've kept this in a clean environment the whole time we've been working with it. So we drop it in there and we put our valve on. It's an O-ring fitting, so of course, don't get the biggest wrench in the shop and don't let the biggest guy in the room tighten this up. Just let it seat down on the O-ring, make sure that it makes good contact and it's a good seal, and then you're good to go. Again, there's no sense in getting a 6-foot bar and having 3 guys pull on it. You then screw whatever you're going to have as a reference point for your driver to the top of the PRV. In that meaning your bleed line, that if this system were to start pushing water because you've lost its air spring, wherever that line runs, typically in these dirt cars it's going to run up into this area so that the driver's got a visual. You still want to do that. So again, you still need to show a line coming off of the top of the PRV so that you've got that reference point. All right, now we've installed our last part of the can, which is our overflow. All right, so now we're going to go into the actual pressure setting of the system. And to do that, we're going to use the pressure setting tool, aptly named. You'll notice that it's got a regulated gauge on here for our incoming air. We also have a large gauge on here, which is going to allow us to see our system pressure. All right, we have a shut-off, which is key. That blocks any air from coming in and also holds our system pressure in a reading. And we've got our regulator knob. No magic here, guys. This is just like about every other regulator valve on a compressor, all right? When it's popped in, it's locked. When it's pulled out, you can adjust it. The first thing you want to do, close the valve to the end of the hose and open the regulator all the way up. It's going to be real dangerous if we got 120 to 200 psi air, shop air, and we hit this system with that much pressure. Not going to be a good thing. The valve's going to do its job. It's just something we don't need to do. So again, close off and open this valve completely counterclockwise. Our instruction manual will clearly show now we're to the pressure setting tool. I've already covered exactly the things you want to make sure you're doing with the tool. So now we will hook it to our pressure system with no air attached. All right? And we can see on our gauge that just from what we've been doing and the heat that's been put into the motor, we actually have got about 1 pound or 2 pounds in the system. All right? So we're going to bleed all that off by turning open the ball valve. Now I have a 0 system pressure. I've got 180-degree water in the system, which means I've got all my water expansion that I'm going to have at the hot setting. So now it's time for us to put the pressure in. So I'll close my valve back off, and I'll take my air hose and put my shop air to the system. All right? And now it comes time to set my pressures. So as you'll read in the instruction manual, and again, this is important, even though we're talking a pressurized system, we are only going to preset 5 to 6 psi. So now you're thinking that's contradictory to what we've been told. Trust me, 5 to 6 psi is our preset, clearly marked in the instruction manual. So I take my regulator, and I don't know if we can see this as well. But I bring it up to 5. I'm going to go ahead and bring it to 6 psi. And I'm going to let it just kind of stabilize, because sometimes shot pressure can change. When I feel comfortable that I'm set, I'm going to open my valve, and I'm now going to let that air pressurize my can. As we can all see, my water level didn't drop, which means that I've gotten all of my air out of the system. We've been good at that. And now that I've actually taken up some of the hose length, I'm a little under my 5 psi on my system pressure, so I'm going to go ahead and bump it up just ever so slightly. And now I'm at my 6 pounds. So I'll lock my valve off, which holds my system pressure, remove the air off of my line, and go ahead and take it off the Jiffy type. So now I have 5 or 6 pounds of air pressure, or what we call now an air spring, in our pressure can. 180 degree water, which means I've gotten my water expansion. So we're set to go.